Okay, good afternoon, good day, good morning, good evening, wherever you're listening to this podcast, at whatever time you're listening. This is episode 7 of Lawyers with Stories. My name is Lisa Thomas, aka Law Mom on LinkedIn. And if you don't know what I'm doing there on LinkedIn, you've been missing out for most of your life. So head over there and check it out. Today, I'm very, very excited to have my LinkedIn friend, Claire Woods. Would be barrister, but now prolific social media marketer, agency owner, and she's not currently lawyering, but she's going to share her aspirations to become a lawyer and, of course, her journey and what brought her to social media marketing. And of course, you can go and check Claire out on LinkedIn. We'll give out the details at the end. So, Claire, welcome to the podcast, and I'm very excited to have you.
Well, thank you very much for having me on your podcast, Lisa. Absolutely delighted to be here for you.
Okay, so I'm not going to do the introduction too much. I'm going to let you give us a bird's eye view, and then, of course, we'll delve into the details as we go along. So, you can start at any point, but hopefully from the beginning, and tell us where you started and, of course, how you got to doing what you're doing now.
Okay. Apologies for my cough, by the way. I'm just recovering from COVID. Um, I am not a lawyer. If you look at my LinkedIn profile, I own a digital marketing agency and I specialise in LinkedIn marketing. However, when I was younger, when I was a child, I wanted to be a lawyer. I wanted to be a barrister specifically. And growing up as one of 4 siblings, I wanted to do like mock trials, and I was playing, every day before I was playing. And my siblings weren't interested in coming to my mock trials. They were more interested in climbing trees and riding bikes. So I just lined up my teddy bears on the bed, and I would have mock trials that way. And I loved doing it. And a very imaginative play, I suppose. So that's what I sort of did when I was growing up, and then studied. I was lucky to do a law A level at school, which I really very much enjoyed, and studied human rights law as one of my modules, which was absolutely fascinating, looking at freedom of the individual. And then went on to university to study a law degree. I absolutely loved it, really threw myself into it, loved the subject. Didn't particularly enjoy property law, actually, probably to do with all the statutes, but particularly like criminal law. And then at the end of year 1, went home for the summer, came back in year 2, and shortly into my second year of my 3-year degree, my older brother died very suddenly of a heart attack. So this was completely out of the blue, and it blew my world apart and my family's world apart. So I went back home and I didn't return to my law degree. I didn't really know. The world was very upside down at that point for me. And so I stayed at home. So I never actually completed my law degree. Should I go on from here, Lisa? Or
Yeah, carry on.
carry on talking? I'll carry on talking. And as Lisa knows, I can talk a lot. Not stopped. So I thought I should probably check in with Lisa. So yes, I came back home and I'd had a holiday job working in a restaurant called TGI Fridays, which you may have heard of. And they just opened up in the UK. So I was just working there doing a mindless job, which suited me at the time. And then I was asked if I would help train the staff, so I did that. And then I was asked if I would consider, excuse me, looking at spending some time in their head office in marketing. And I thought, yeah, why not? So I went up and spent a couple of days up there and actually thought, actually, I quite like this. It was different. It was fun. It was a changing direction in my life that I never knew was going to come my way. And I think it was the breath of fresh air that I needed. So I then found a course to study marketing in London, and I got a diploma in marketing. And then I got my first marketing job. So I then launched myself into a career in marketing. However, going through life, I realised I never got my degree and never got my law degree, and that bugged me for a while because that was always the dream. But what I found more so, the thing that bothered me most is that I didn't have a degree. And I think that in society today, it's a huge advantage to have a graduate degree. So I decided maybe I would go back to university and study, but I didn't want to study law. Something was very much driving me against law. It could have been because the memory is tied up with studying law and then losing my brother at that time, and I think definitely there's something in there. So after discussions with my lovely mother, excuse me, we talked about studying history of art, which was something I was always interested in, funnily enough, because when we were growing up, Mum used to take us to art galleries, and I was one of 4 children, and she used to say, right, choose a painting, choose a sculpture, choose something in this gallery. She would give us a guidebook, so we chose something out. And she would say, right, look at it, tell me which one do you want to see, and when we go to the gallery, I will show you your special piece of art, and I will tell you all about it. So every February half term, she would drag us all up to London on the train, feed us up with McDonald's, and then we would go to the National Gallery in London or the Royal Academy or somewhere else, and we would go and look at our special works of art. So that's where the history of art came into it, because I just wanted to know a little bit more about that. I always enjoyed looking at these paintings, these sculptures. I always enjoyed listening to the stories about the sculptors, about the artists themselves. But I wanted to know what was going on behind the canvas. So that's how I ended up studying history of art. So I started off studying at Oxford University, and then I studied part-time, and while studying the second half of my first year, my younger brother died suddenly. So I found myself feeling, is this what happens when I study? If ever I want to
Yeah.
better myself in life, somebody dies. And it just stopped me in my tracks. And I felt I absolutely hit rock bottom. I thought, I can't believe this. Why is this happening to me again? It felt like it was very much happening to me, when in fact it wasn't happening to me. It was happening to my brothers. I'm still alive. I'm still here. And so at that point, I remember I was walking by the river one day with my dog, and I told myself, I will not let death define me. I will not let that happen. So, and I'm really pleased that I came to that point. It was hard. It was unbelievably hard when you go through something as dramatic as losing not one but 2 brothers who you love dearly.
Yes.
Actually fight back and pull yourself back up again I can't. It's like wading through treacle. That's the only way I can describe it. So I got through the end of my second year at Oxford, very understanding tutors, and they said to me, look, just do the coursework. You can do the coursework, just submit something. That's all you need to do. Your marks are good. Remember that. So I submitted courseworks. Excuse me. They were diabolical. I read over them afterwards. Probably shouldn't have done. They were absolutely awful. Total embarrassment. However, I got through. I passed that year. And then I took a break because I needed it. It took a lot of effort to get through that second year. So I took a break, and then after about 6 months, I thought, right, okay, I can do this now. Now, bear in mind as well, at this time, I wasn't if there is such thing as a normal student age. I wasn't a late teen or early 20s. I was actually in my early 40s. 3 children, and I had a husband who was working for a company which meant that he was in New York every 2 weeks. 2 weeks home, 2 weeks away, 2 weeks home, 2 weeks away. So it was tough. But again, I just told myself, right, you survived this far. you can keep going, you can do this. And I
Mm.
just totally believed in myself. So
Yeah.
I went back to my tutor in Oxford and I spoke to her about restarting. And we discussed the modules that were available to me. And I looked at them and they were just dull as dishwater. And there are a lot, I'm not saying all courses at Oxford are dull, but there are a lot of modules on some of the more academic courses, which of course history and art and architecture is deemed to be an academic one. And the modules can be very dry and not really exciting.
Mm.
And as I had the choice in life, and I was choosing to be positive, choosing to believe in myself, choosing to be happy, I thought, this does not spark joy looking at these modules. So
Mm.
my tutor was very understanding. She said, yes, I didn't think you'd like these. Look, why don't you have a look at Reading University? Because I lived sort of about halfway between Oxford and Reading anyway. Have a look at Reading
Mm.
University. I know the guy who heads up the faculty there. And she said it's a little bit more modern, a bit more different, dynamic, and you might like it there. So I looked at Reading University, looked at the modules, and I was like a kid in a candy store. There were so many that I could choose from. Uh,
Mm.
so I then transferred my studies to Reading University. And then I fast tracked my studies. So I wasn't doing part time anymore, I did full time study.
Mm.
So I was a student again, which I loved, even though I was in my early 40s, I was 41. Um, all my friends on the course were 18, 20, 21. There was a couple of other mature students. But they all loved me. They called me Mama Claire. And I used to come in, I used to bake a lot because I was always baking with the kids. So I would bake extra cakes and bring them into lectures. Um, and actually, I had an absolutely brilliant time and I loved it. And I graduated from Reading University in 2015. And I very nearly got a first. I was 1.27% off a first, so I'm not bitter at all. But it was the most amazing experience to do that. So that was amazing. And then after that, I then got a job working in a museum in the marketing department. So I combined my skills in marketing and as knowledge of art, and
Mm.
that was incredible. I absolutely loved that. Then went on to work for a B2B travel company, and then set up my own business, which I never thought in a million years I would do. But here I am.
Mm.
So there you go. That probably brings you up to date, I think.
Yeah, it was actually very well said because all these pictures were forming in my mind. So I was getting some nice visuals,
Oh, good.
picturing what the entire journey looked like. Uh, there's so much that we can just pick apart from there. Um,
Pick
and I
away.
think,
Show yourself.
I think for me, you're talking about taking a break or hitting the pause button when tragedy strikes.
Yeah.
Um, and that's something that I actively encourage people in the legal profession worldwide, but majority of South Africans who don't know how to do that. So it will be a case of, I got to keep going. I got to keep going. I've come so far.
Mm.
Um, and it can be illness, it can be death.
Mm.
It's, I guess it depends on the gravity of each one, but I think, just taking a break and, looking at life. Because I think another thing I always encourage is that, you don't lose sight of the life that's happening around you.
Mm.
When you are lawyering, when you are studying law, often there's this tunnel vision. It's my qualification, it's my admission, it's my career, and
Yeah.
everything else can happen around me. I just have to get to where I want to get to.
Yeah.
And I think it's so important, especially when you have family dynamic, or if you are married and you have children. I mean, all those things factor in, and at some point you got to say what's more important or what comes first.
Mm.
um, and of course, another deeper issue which I wanted to bring out was the trauma that's related now to law.
Mm.
And one of my angles is mental health.
Mm.
And I think that can trauma can take place on many levels. With you, it was you, associating university with death,
Mm-hmm.
right? In some other cases, it'll be they associate, studying law, or even practicing law, with maybe a sexual harassment or
Yeah.
bullying that takes place in the workplace. So you have this natural now aversion. You don't want to go back. Like you said, you didn't want to go back.
Yeah.
You thought, oh, it's just, maybe it's jinxed, or maybe I'm not
Yeah.
meant to go to university. But I
Yes.
think, you know, and I mean, it's great that you went back, yeah, at the age that you did, right? And for those of you who didn't catch it, Claire's a mom of three children in their 20s.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, she's life's been going on in the background about all of this.
Mm-hmm.
All of these things have been happening as well. And I think when it comes to sometimes the trauma aspect of it, it just shuts people off forever. And I get that often. So I get asked, "Is this is what law is like? I don't want to do it,"
Yeah.
or "Is this what being a lawyer is about? I don't want to be here,"
Mm.
or "I don't want to introduce my children to this profession."
Yeah.
So there are all kinds of trauma that can be associated with a career, and I think there's some people. I just want to put it out there. If you don't ever want to go back, that's okay. Okay.
Yeah.
And of course, Claire didn't go back to law. She went back to, I guess, your first love, which is, the history of art and all things humanities related. I would guess.
Yeah.
But if guys, you don't want to go back to law because it's associated with maybe a death in the family, maybe over you sort of put that too much at the forefront and people suffered as a result and there's trauma, it's okay not to go there. Okay,
Yeah.
you can take a huge break, and when you are ready, then you go into maybe what you want to do, right? And as Claire's story will indicate as we talk more, that you can actually marry the two. You can actually use those transferable skills from wanting to be a lawyer to being, in this case, a social media marketer. So,
Mm.
um, but of course, on a more lighter note, I like the role playing with teddy bears. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I was, I was just doing kid stuff. I always had a big mouth, so and my followers and my listeners are used to me saying this. That's all that I think suited me for this career is just saying things for calling things out for what they are. And so, but in terms of role playing with with the teddies, I mean, that was some very early indication there
Yeah.
that you wanted to be a barrister, or as we say here, an advocate.
Yeah.
um so I mean, what would you say, because obviously law had an appeal for you for
Mm.
certain reasons.
Mm.
um how would you say you've transferred some of that, or is it have you completely left that behind in what you're doing now?
Gosh, that's an interesting question. Um, there are a number of transferable skills actually. I mean, if you think about being a barrister, you have to, an advocate, as you say in South Africa, to do that, you have to be confident. You have to stand up in a room full of people and believe in yourself, in your words, in what you're saying, because you're responsible for somebody else's fate in that room.
Mm,
Um, and running your own business is not for the faint-hearted.
yeah.
You need confidence. You need to 100% believe in what you're doing and back yourself daily. So that there is a similarity there. I think there's something about strength of character which enables me to do what I'm doing now, which would have enabled me to be a barrister as well. I think resilience is a key factor as well.
Yep.
Um, resilience, which I never knew I had when I was a child. I don't think anybody realizes what they have when they're a child. It's always simplistic. Excuse me. But when you go through life events, which I mean, I'm terrible really in that I often say, if somebody says to me, "Oh, I've had a terrible day. Oh, it's been awful," and I say, "Oh, what's happened?" And they go da 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 da, and in my head I'm thinking, "Well, it's not like somebody died." And it's a thing to say, and I have to stop myself and say it. Honestly, I have to bite my tongue,
Yeah.
because that is the worst thing that can happen, that somebody can die. That
Yeah.
is absolutely categorically, because death is so final. So for me to experience one brother dying suddenly out of the blue from a heart attack, age 22, and then my other brother who died from another heart-related um,
Mm.
disease, totally unrelated to what my other brother had. They had two separate heart conditions.
Mm.
And for that to happen after he had heart surgery when he should have been okay, to have that was like a double slap in the face.
Yeah.
For me to, not that I realised it at the time, but to look back on that and to think, I survived.
Yeah.
I know that I'm resilient, and I
Yeah.
know I know that my shoulders are wide. I know I can take that responsibility.
Mm.
Um, I think as well, in terms of looking at studying law and being able to absorb large amounts of information, I'm very good at doing that. So when I'm
Mm.
not that I'm looking at anything as complex as legal, as statutes or case law or anything like that, but when I take on board a new client and
Mm.
I ask them for all the information about their company, so all about their company or about the key stakeholders, about their products, about their services, about their finances, what their plans are for growth, I'm able to take that in very quickly and surmise it very quickly. So that helps me.
Yeah.
Today, it means I'm very proficient. I'm very, very efficient with my time,
Mm.
which is good. What other things do I say? I'm good at problem solving, which I think
Mm.
is a good skill to have as a lawyer. That ability to look at a situation objectively and to just look,
Yeah.
well, what are the facts here? What are the key facts here? And to pull out those key pieces of information and almost
Mm.
toss everything else in the bin and then just focus on what's really important. So
Yeah.
again, when dealing with clients and they're saying, well, we need to do this, and we need to do that, we need to do that. And I say, okay, well, I hear you, but let's look at what's important here. And
Mm.
what you said now, does that enable us to get from where we are now to where you want to
Yeah.
be?
Yeah.
And if the answer is yes, great. If the answer is no, right, we need to think this through. We need to talk this one out. We need to workshop it.
Mm. Mm.
So yes, there are definitely transferable skills. And I think, excuse me, anyone who studies law degree, even goes on and does their professional qualifications, and then perhaps is just unable to get a training contract because it is so
Mm.
highly competitive out there.
Yeah.
And I know actually some of my daughter's friends who are going for training contracts, and these are incredibly talented individuals, and they're struggling to get them as well. So it's tough. If you don't get one, there is always another way.
Yeah.
You know, if you still feel passionate about the law, why not consider going and working in a citizen advice bureau or something, giving some voluntary work there or helping out there? Why not? Excuse me. Why not consider going and teaching law in a sixth form college? If you really
Yeah.
want to do that, or why not think about, well, which area of law was I really interested in? And if
Mm.
it was criminal law, maybe think to yourself, well, okay, well, I was interested in criminology. Well, I can still work in that space if I work for the police.
Mm.
Just think outside of the box. Think about what's the. It's like with me. When I went back to university, I didn't want to do law, but I thought, well, what interests me? And I was talking to my mum, and I realised history of art. That was
Mm.
something, it just made my heart sing when we talked about it. So I found something which I really loved.
Mm.
And I studied it. I really enjoyed it, absolutely adored it. and then got a career out of it, and it
Mm.
pushed it got me going again. So
Yeah.
there's always a way. Don't ever think because if you get to a point where law is just not working out for you, don't think it's the end of the world. It's
Yeah.
not the end of the world. It actually means it's the start of something new. It's the start of a new chapter in your life if you go do something else.
Mm. Mm.
And equally, if you studied law, as I did only for about 18 months, um, I've got a number of friends who are lawyers. And in fact, my best friend, who I know won't listen to this because he's never on LinkedIn anyway, he's too busy to being a lawyer. He is the most incredible lawyer. He was my best friend at uni. He begged me to come back to uni. He missed me so much. And I just can't. I just can't. My world's been turned upside down.
Yeah.
And he went on to specialise in education law.
Mm.
And then went on to specialise in special educational needs law. And he is the most successful lawyer in this country for special educational needs law.
Oh.
Anyway, we've kept in touch. And we meet up now and again when he's up in London, where I live. And when I meet up with him, we talk about law. And he talks to me about cases. And he said, "Do you know what, Claire, this case is really bothering me. Can I tell you about it?" And I said, "Yeah, sure, tell me." And then we sit and we talk about it. And then we might have some other lawyers in the room as well, and we'll discuss it with them as well. So I really enjoy that. And I've also,
Yeah.
I've made other friends, as you do in life. You have some friends when you're at school, then you make new friends at uni, then you have new friends in your 20s, in your 30s, etc., etc. And maybe you get new neighbours moving into your street. I've met friends along the way who have become very good friends of mine, who are lawyers. And
Mm.
and there's two in particular who said to me, "Do you know what? You would have made a really good lawyer." And I said, "It's funny you should say that." And then I tell them that I studied law and that's what I always wanted to do. So I don't know if it's my pragmatic approach
Yeah.
or calm approach or what it is. But there's something in me which I suppose maybe a little bit of a lawyer just never left me at all.
Yeah, I'm a believer in that. I mean, even though I've left the field, so to speak,
Mm.
and my sort of sweet spot now within the field is legal education.
Yeah,
But there's still something about, even when I'm watching, legal dramas, and I prefer the British ones because they're a little bit more realistic and sedate.
yeah,
I find myself, I'm activated and, like, that was a bad line of cross examination, or that was you
yeah, yeah,
know how is that even relevant?
yeah,
So, you
totally.
know there's, even though you may move on for whatever reason, or you have a change of heart, or you pivot your career, um I'm a firm believer in continuity, so that is never truly left behind, because there'll be still some part of that. It's activated some part of you that nothing else can activate.
Yeah,
So whenever that comes along, the stimulation, you find, hey, the lawyer in me comes out. And so I think it's a really, I call it a full circle moment, where later in life you make all these lawyer friends who are now bringing you back in a way.
yeah,
They're bringing you kind of full circle, like, to what you left, and
mm,
now you are, in a sense, keeping tabs on the field, because you're getting to have these conversations, and your mind is still somewhat engaged by legal stuff.
yeah,
So I think that's really, I think, for those that may have, like I mentioned earlier, may have left the legal field because of trauma, or you know various kinds of trauma, or workplace bullying, or whatever.
yes,
You can still be in touch with the field. You don't have to hate the whole of the practice of law. You may just hate being in a law firm, or maybe just hate being in a courtroom for whatever you might have suffered. But you can still network. You can still, because part of you still loves it. I always tell people that when
yes,
they are put down, or they are discouraged by what's going on in the office, I say, and they say, "You know what? I used to love law," and I say, No, you still love it. It's
Mm,
just that you are going through something now that is putting a, throwing a wet blanket over it. But deep down
yeah.
inside, I can guarantee you still love it.
Yeah.
So if anyone out there might have left the field, or you're thinking very seriously of leaving because it's toxic, or you're suffering some kind of trauma, psychological abuse or whatever, emotional abuse, God
Mm,
forbid, sexual abuse in a
mm,
law firm,
yeah.
just be mindful that you can still maintain a connection to the field by networking, by
Yes.
making friends, by keeping in touch with the colleagues whom you are thinking of leaving behind. So I
Yeah.
think I think it's really cool, the way it worked out for you like that,
Mm,
because normally when we leave something for a bad reason or for a traumatic reason, we're like, we want to shelve it, we don't want to revisit that part of our lives.
mm,
But I think it's very nice that people have come into your life that are sort of making you talk about it again, and then even complimenting you that you have um, the chops, as it were, to be a lawyer
yeah.
without knowing that you were going to study that, and
Yeah.
then finding out that, wow, you actually were going to be that. So
Mm,
I think, you know what, maybe the qualification is overrated. And I think at some point I referred to you, I said you are very much a lawyer.
yeah.
I the qualification just sort of, it's there because the system requires it
Yeah.
for recognition and for practice and ethics and all that.
Yeah.
But I think at your heart, if you are something, then the qualification is just sort of an external kind of validation. Um, and then of course you mentioned resilience, which is something that I talk about
Mm,
often. And I'm younger than you are, but
mm,
not as young as I used to be. But when I talk to the younger ones and I tell them you got to build capacity now. So a lot of them are very myopic.
mm,
That they think failing exams is the end of the world, or a breakup is the end of the world. And I always tell them there's something more. Life gets more complicated as you get older. So if you can allow these situations to build, like going to the gym, if you can allow it to work your muscles now, then when the heavier stuff comes along, your muscles have the capacity to lift whatever you have to lift.
yeah.
And I think, like you also pointed out, you didn't. I don't think anybody knows that they are resilient until the situation comes along.
No.
Then you realize, like you had that walk with your dog by the river,
Mm,
like, yeah, okay, I'm grieving. I'm still in shock, but I have to move forward. So I can't wait for this to end. I can't wait for the feeling to go away. Even if I have to move forward with that feeling, with that grief, I still have to get on with my life.
yeah.
So I think all of us in different contexts, myself included, we just come to those moments where we like grab a hold of the situation,
Mm,
and we, as opposed to ignoring it and maybe carrying on, which is what some people do at the peril of it surfacing later,
mm,
because we know the body remembers
mm,
trauma. So, it's that thing about, okay, we down in the dumps, we allow ourselves to cry. And in our context, I mean, the exams are terrible.
mm,
People, they lose hope. They lose hope in the dream. They don't want to, try the exams one more time because it's just too taxing. And of course, you have to, I always say, feel what you need to feel disappointed, grieve the loss of the dream, but you gotta bounce back. And in that time of being down in the dumps, is you actually the comeback is actually the grand event. You're planning to make a comeback. However you make it and whatever you come back to is up to you. But the thing is, when these situations come, um, you're going to have to take a step back. It is going to knock you over. It is going to knock the wind out of your sails. But there's a time of regrouping, recalibration, back to the drawing board, adjusting, like you did.
Yeah.
Okay, so uni was terrifying because you had two deaths occur. But no, at some point you said, okay, no, I still want to go and give it another shot.
Yeah.
Right? So it's planning the comeback, and it might not be what others think the comeback is going to be. So you didn't go back to university to study law. That's fine. But you came back. That resilience, that bounceability, you bounce back. So I think that's very, for those of you out there that are kind of in you're listening to this and you in a similar situation, know that whatever you bounce back to, it doesn't have to be what people think it is. It can always be an adjusted version of your dream, or maybe something completely different. But the important thing is that you come back, and because you've been in the valley and you come back, it means that you have more capacity now when you do face something that's challenging. So I think it's a loaded lesson there, but I think it's something that I can't overstate, especially for the young ones, because life does get more complicated as you get older, and adulting is definitely hard, as I'm finding out these days. Sometimes you just want to run away from it all, but you can't.
Mm.
Okay, so I think
I think as well, though, we're talking about life gets more complicated. I think it's
yeah,
important to say as well that along with the complications, life also gets really exciting and really
yeah,
interesting. And there are so
mm,
many amazing things to do. And that you have one life, you have one stab at this, you've got one go at this at your life, and it's entirely up to you what you do with that life.
mm,
So yes, it gets complicated, but there's always something good out there for you.
mm.
Don't ever forget that.
Yeah. And like you said, there's always, if law doesn't work out,
Mm,
I mean, there's always another way. And often it's the case, and I want this to change, that we come to a certain point and then we realize, okay, I have to think out of the box. But if you think out of the box from the beginning or as early as possible, then of course you know that, okay, if my law career is not working the way I wanted it to, then like you said, voluntary work and you know, maybe you just pull it back for a little while. Don't rush into qualification and calling to the bar. And
mm,
so, there's always, and I think planning is also so important,
mm.
because when you plan and you have all these contingencies, then of course, when something doesn't work out, you can pull out the file. You can say, I'm going to plan why now.
Yeah.
And it's just a lot better, to come in and bounce back and to be resilient when you sort of have some sort of a plan in place. So um yeah, so obviously you pivoted, or you found your love for marketing,
Hmm.
and even though it's not a career that's directly related to the law, or you're not encountering the law every day,
Hmm.
um can you tell me what that change was like? Was it just something that you loved and you just dove into, or did you take time to adjust, to learn the ropes?
It kind of, I suppose when I was working at TGI Fridays, and I was looking, I thought I've got to do something in my life, and I was topping up ketchup bottles and sugar pots and things like that, thinking, God, this is boring. I need to use my brain again. Um, and then, as I say, I had the opportunity to go and spend the day or two at the head office with the marketing director. And I thought, oh, this is fun. This is interesting. It's creative, and I suppose there's a small part of me that is creative. Um, so I went home, talked to my mum, which I used to love doing, and sadly she passed away a few years ago.
Hmm.
And she said, well, why didn't you find a marketing course to do? I went, well, okay, I could do that. So I then looked into marketing courses. I found a 1 year diploma I could take. And I looked into the modules of the course, and I thought, yeah, actually, let's do that. Let's have a go. So it was very much, let's have a go. Let's take the leap. I didn't really know anything about marketing till that point. So
Mm.
it was a leap of faith, I suppose. But I also
Mm.
think, well, it's fun, it's different, it's completely different to anything else I've ever thought about doing in my life.
Mm.
Um, so that's where it started. And then I really enjoyed the course. And then when I left the course, I got a job with an American company as sort of a marketing assistant there, and learned how to do marketing internally in a
Mm.
company, working with an external agency. And then from there, I then moved to consultancy. And I was like an account exec, which is the lowest position you can get in consultancy. And so I was very lucky in that it was a small business, and the
Yeah.
owner was very happy to let you have a go at everything.
Mm.
Which is that's one of the best things about small businesses. It's kind of like it's good and bad. On the one hand, you have to do everything. On the other hand, you have the chance to have a go at everything.
Yeah.
So it's anything from rolling your sleeves up and making tea to writing a strategy for a client.
Yeah.
But an incredible place to learn. So that was sort of like a huge step up for me in terms of my ability, my knowledge of marketing, my knowledge of strategic marketing.
Mm.
Because I'm not a creative. I'm not somebody who's going to do graphic design.
Yeah.
I know how to brief a graphic designer. I know what the client wants.
Mm.
I know how to brief a media buyer, how to brief a PR consultant, websites. I build websites for my business partner. But I know how to take a brief for those. I know what looks good. I know what works. So,
Mm.
so I learned a lot there. And then I left there to go back internally to a marketing department in a company. And then actually, going back to law again, or going full circle here, I was pregnant with my third child, not planned. Planned to have 3 children, just didn't plan to have the third one at that point.
Yeah.
And I went on holiday and I came back and I was made redundant. And
Mm.
it was a very interesting situation. So I was sat there in the office with the HR director. And she said to me, "You are being made redundant." Now, I don't know what your listeners know about, or the students know about redundancy. You don't make a person redundant, you make a position redundant.
Yeah.
So as soon as you said you are being made redundant, in my head, I'm thinking, you can't do that. And I sat there and I nodded and I said, okay. And I reminded her I was pregnant because I told her before I went on holiday I was pregnant. And she said, "Oh, I didn't know that. Oh, congratulations." And I sat there and I didn't say anything. I thought, you this, I told you. Now, one thing they tell you when you train, when you do PR, when you train in PR, marketing, advertising, particularly in PR, is you keep a day book. Okay, so it's a notebook. It doesn't have to be grand. It doesn't have to be a specific type of notebook. And in there, you write down every day. Every day, you put the date on the page, and then
Mm.
you write down notes from meetings. So, like,
Mm.
this morning I had a meeting with a client, and I've written down the action points from that meeting. Other days I might write down, invoicing or chase up so and so for a copy on this or whatever it is. It's
Mm.
just like reminders or action points that have come out of meetings. So the day that before I went on holiday, and I told the HR director that I was pregnant, and it was a bit of a surprise. And the reason why I told her, I was about 12 weeks pregnant at this point, was because my son was due at a time in the year which is a key time for marketing for the company. And I
Okay.
knew it was going to be a real inconvenience if I wasn't around. So I thought, right, better give him a heads up now. And now I was 12 weeks pregnant, which, as you know, Lisa, is a relatively safe time to tell people.
Mm.
And I just thought, well, let's put some planning in place. Let's put some structure in place here. Let's get the team in the right place so that everything's covered. And so I made a note in my book. When I got back to my desk, meeting with HR director, the name obviously of the date, discussed my pregnancy, when baby's due next February, and then made notes saying about writing up a plan for next year. Okay.
Yeah.
So when I came back from holiday, and I sat in her office, and she said to me, "You're being made redundant." And in my head, I'm going, "No, you can't say that to me." And then I told her I was pregnant, and she said, "Oh, I didn't know that." I'm thinking, "You're a liar." And I had my day book to refer back to. And with a day book, if you do these regularly, and I've kept a day book since my first marketing job, so
Uh-huh.
which was quite a few years ago, and I've kept all my day books. And so when I left there that day, because she said, "Well, you probably want to go home now, don't you?" And I said, "Yeah, that's probably a good idea. It's a bit of a shock." So I phoned my husband and told him, and he was, well, I won't tell you what he said, but it was a little bit rude. And then I drove back home and I went for a walk. I'm thinking, she can't do that to me. She can't say to me, "You are being made redundant," and then deny the fact she knew I was pregnant. I'm a pregnant woman. You really can't make pregnant ladies redundant. That's a big no-no.
Yeah.
Anyway, I was walking down by the river and I bumped into a friend who's a lawyer. She said, "Oh, hi, how are you?" And I said, "I'm a bit grumpy, actually." She said, "What's the matter?" So I told her. And she said, "They can't do that to you." I said, "Well, I'm glad you said that. I thought that too." And she said, "Let's have a chat." So, and she was actually an employment lawyer. And one of the lawyers in her practice was a specialist in maternity law. So I had a chat with this maternity lawyer. Wendy was her name. I said, "Look, I don't know if I've got a case." So I gave her some other details as well, and blah, blah, blah. Because I was the only one they were making redundant. And there was no consultation period, nothing at all. So I gave lots of information. And I said, "I don't know if I've got a case here, Wendy." And she said, "By God, you've got a case." I went, "Oh, okay." But then I thought, fine. So I sued them. And I wasn't being malicious in how I sued them. I just felt that I wanted my loss of earnings up until the point I was due to go on maternity leave, and then my maternity pay after that. Because Ben and I had a conversation about how the likelihood was I wasn't going to go back to work with 3 small children.
Yeah.
That would be quite a struggle, and actually maybe just take a couple of years out and then go back to work. So yes, that's what I was looking for, loss of earnings. And they came back and said they didn't know I was pregnant. So my lawyer had all the notes from my day book and the photocopies from my day book to prove, well, yes, you were told. And then my lawyer said, "Oh, can we see the entry in the HR director's diary from that day of the meeting?" Excuse me. And so the HR director, well, first off, the lawyers came back and said, "Oh, the HR director doesn't keep a diary." And so my lawyer pushed harder, and she said, "Well, my client says that she does have a diary and she writes lots of notes in her diary," which she did, because I saw her do it. And then the diary pages were sent across, like diary pages, and it literally just said, "Meeting with Claire Woods on a day," no notes at all. And I said to my lawyer, "That's not her diary." And eventually she got hold of the diary. The HR director ripped out the pages of the meeting she had with me. So yeah, very interesting case. And then later on, they accused me of not accused me. They said that I wasn't up to the job, that I didn't have relevant experience because la la la. And I said, "Well, yes, I did have this experience, and gave all the experience I had that they was alleging I didn't have." And in the end, they they wouldn't back down. I wouldn't back down either. I was fighting it on principle. I do have, I suppose, the sleepy lawyer inside me. I just feel that I have a sense of what's right and wrong.
Yeah.
And I feel that it was wrong the way they treated me. And something needed to happen because this couldn't happen to anyone else.
Yeah.
So I was fighting it on point of principle. And I suppose I removed myself from this situation entirely, and I purely focused on the facts in front of me with my lawyer.
Yeah.
So then a court date. They offered one settlement, it wasn't enough, and I told them to go away. And then they came. Then we said, "We'll see you in court." So my lawyer said, "Right, we're going to get the top brief in the area, top barrister in the area." Went to get him, and he'd already been employed by my ex-employer. And she
Mm.
said, "Oh, they're scared. They know they're going to lose this. They wouldn't normally do this otherwise." So we got the second barrister in the chambers, and then we had a date to go to court, and got to the date, and typically the case was bumped because the case, the court was overrunning, etc. And then
Mm.
we got another date for the date in court, and on that day, I was getting, my lawyer was calling me constantly. Right, they've upped the offer. They'll give you this much. And I said, no, it's not enough. This is what I want. This is my loss of earnings. This is what I will settle for.
Yeah.
She said, okay. And probably about 5 calls that day, they kept increasing the offer, and I kept saying no because it wasn't the amount that I was looking for. And literally at 5 o'clock, the day before the case, my lawyer called me and she said, I'm not going to tell you what she said because she was so ecstatic and she swore quite a lot as well. But she said, you've done it. I can't believe it. You've done it. You've absolutely smashed it. You've got what you wanted. And yeah, so I won the case. I got what was fair in my mind.
Yeah.
And I did it. I mean, I had a huge legal bill, not going to lie.
Yeah.
But it was worth it. And I
Yeah.
think that's what I love about the law, is that the law can help people who have been wronged.
Yeah.
In fact, my great friend Mike, who's my best friend from uni, he says that what he loves most about the law is that you use the power of words to help the little people.
Mm.
These are words that have been laid down in statute. These have been words that have been laid down in precedent.
Yeah.
And you're using those powerful words to help these people.
Mm.
And that's what I love about it.
I mean, uh, you're still very much. I mean, I think given if you have enough run-ins like this, I think you'll be engaging more with the law than with social media marketing.
Oh God.
No, I mean it's really intriguing, and I like what you said about which brings out the point of this being objective is that you fought the matter on principle.
Mm,
You know, and I think that's the thing about the law in that if you're fighting from an objective, if you understand that the fight is objective, then you're
mm,
actually setting down precedent for others,
yes.
right? Because the law is only developed, it's not developed in a vacuum, it's developed because people have real life situations.
Yeah.
So I think, that whole thing of, okay, as much as, okay, you're pregnant, hormonal, could have very much been an emotional fight,
Mm,
but having that objective, and I think I'm that way as well, objective, pragmatic, we need to get what we need to get for this reason, and
mm,
the reason should ideally be for the greater good. So which means somebody down the line who's coming with that same situation,
yeah.
they have your case becomes precedent,
Yeah.
which I think is a very nice, I guess, litigation or negotiation tip is always keep in mind the bigger picture,
Mm-hmm.
that as much as you're fighting your case and it's your battle, very much your legal bill,
Mm,
um, but you could potentially be fighting something that sets the tone for somebody else's case, a potential victory. So I think that's a very and the power of words. I mean, that's what, and that's something you do now. I think that's another commonality with what you do now is all this SEO, you know, search engine optimization, and all the content marketing spiel, and websites, and writing copy, and writing social media marketing, writing posts. I
mm.
mean, that's the power of words,
It
right?
is. Yeah.
That's the power of words that is helping people, is obviously earning the client money. So I think it's there. It's a different kind of, I guess you're still persuading them, right? You're persuading them to buy through your copywriting or the way you optimize your your website, but I think that's another common point, that you're still using words and you're still helping people,
Yeah.
or you helping clients help people,
Mm.
by advising them the words that they need to use on websites and landing pages and newsletters and LinkedIn posts. So I think it's really cool. I don't think you stop being a lawyer at all. I mean, I thought we were going to talk about social media marketing, but we really spoke about lawyering, and I love the fact that you had all these run-ins, because I don't think those were coincidental. I think you just meant to be in that field.
Mm.
And you'll, even though you don't have the qualification, I think it's still in you. So, um, I mean, I guess it's inspiring in the sense that you are in another field. But for me, I guess I can run legal stuff by you. I can get your, opinion on things. I mean, your legal mind is still, I think your legal mind is just as active as your what you're doing now. Um, I think anyone can just tap in. They can just press the button and they'll activate you. They will activate you. Yeah, just vending machine.
Excuse me. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think it's really cool. And maybe just to land the plane, maybe for those that are maybe thinking of venturing into your field now, so just maybe give us a rundown of what your current work involves, and of course tell us about the agency and all of those things.
Okay. So my company's called Kennedy Woods Digital Marketing. We started out purely doing social media for people, and when I started out doing social media, I didn't even look at LinkedIn. I was doing Instagram, Facebook, and a bit of Twitter, or X as it's called. Um, oh, sorry. And then I realized nobody was looking at LinkedIn. Nobody was helping clients with LinkedIn. So
Mm,
I saw an opportunity. So I pivoted the business to focusing on LinkedIn. So I then just did LinkedIn marketing with my clients, advising them on content, producing their content for them, writing for them. And then something with social media I do with LinkedIn is that people will look at LinkedIn, and the next thing they do is they look at your website. Um, so I sort of would say to clients, well, when they ask about LinkedIn, I said, what's your website like? And they said, why are you asking? And I said, because if your website isn't fit for purpose, all this traffic, all this interest, all this brand awareness you're creating, this buzz on LinkedIn,
mm,
it will leave LinkedIn and go to your website. And if your website doesn't answer the user query,
mm,
if it's not what they think they're looking at, they will bounce straight off it. So we need to look at your website. And they go, oh, okay. So then I started doing websites, because rather than passing the business away, which is a bit nutty, isn't it, really? I started doing websites as well. So it was then websites and LinkedIn. And then we started doing websites, and people were like, oh, do you do SEO? Yes, we do SEO. Oh, do you do blogs? Yes, we do blogs. And then suddenly you get more involved in the whole marketing package.
yeah.
And what's happened is that, I mean, with my clients, is that I'm either the person they come to for LinkedIn training, or they want LinkedIn mentoring. So they want somebody to keep them on track with their content.
Yeah.
So they sort of work with me every month, and we have a catch-up call. We talk about their posts in last month. We talk about their posts going forward for this month. We talk about
Mm,
any queries they've got, any questions they've got, and then set them on their way. And then we have the check-in call every month so it keeps them accountable. So we have those who are either training, LinkedIn training, or mentoring. Or I have clients who have blogs. So I write their blogs for them for their websites. Or we build the whole website. So we take on the whole website. Or
mm,
we do the website, the SEO, the blogs, the LinkedIn. So we do all the marketing. And then with other clients, it might be, I need a marketing strategy. I don't know where to start. Can you help me? And so then I will workshop that with a client and
Mm,
help them understand who they are, what their company is, what their products are, what their service is, what their USP
mm,
is, and talk about their branding, their brand values. I put together a whole brand identity for them, and then work with graphic designers to do the actual logos, etc. as well, the brand guidelines. And then they'll have a strategy, which they can then implement themselves, or they can work with us to implement it for them. Um, and then with other people, it's just they have a really good idea what they want to do with their marketing, but they just need to be kept on track. So again, it's
yes.
like mentoring. So every month they'll have a call with me, and we'll talk about what they've done last month, what they've achieved, what their targets were, did they've achieved them, did it work, do we need to change things this month, do we need to pivot slightly, or do we
Mm,
carry on where we are now? And it's that sort of like marketing mentoring. So we're sort of like an extension of their marketing team, or we can be
mm,
their marketing team. So I like working with small businesses. I
yeah.
like helping people, um, but equally I like working with the larger businesses as well, because then you get really um, you're allowed to be completely involved in their marketing and really help them to achieve their goals and achieve their targets, and ultimately to increase their leads and get more sales over the line.
Yeah. Okay.
That's really
And just for the listeners out there, I've been a beneficiary, so um, I can testify to the expertise. Right. So,
oh, thank you very much.
and I, obviously with my presence on LinkedIn, I didn't ever intend on becoming. I don't know anything about branding, and then like you said, like your business has evolved. I mean, if I talk about it from a LinkedIn presence perspective, it's like it just became bigger and bigger and bigger until I realized this is something that I need to leverage.
Mm,
And that's when I came to you guys, because you guys are the experts and I trust you.
yeah.
So, you know, at some point, and even for lawyers or even aspiring lawyers, even law students, I encourage them, please use LinkedIn, because ultimately, when even if you join a firm or you work for a firm and you find yourself hopping from one firm to the next because you are chasing your career, chasing your ambitions, you are the brand. So you got to market yourself in a specific way. So outside of the reputation of your firm, you
Mm,
have to know who you are, what you stand for, and the easiest way for the most visible way to keep your brand running is to post on LinkedIn.
yeah.
And you can start whatever level you're at. The point is, people know that you exist, and that in effect, you are letting them know how you think and all of those things. And eventually, if you do end up starting some kind of a legal business, be it a consultancy, you're going to want to make use of services like Kennedy Woods, because that is the power of personal branding and how
Hmm.
it can get you an income by just having a very deliberate and intentional online or digital footprint, which is so key now because everything is going online. And if you are online one way and you in real life another, it's just you gotta put your good, not your best photoshopped version of yourself, but if you put yourself out there very authentically, then in real life it can translate into business, into clients, into income, and we all want that. So just an encouragement. Obviously, we'll give out the details just now, but I can't, from a personal perspective, I can't emphasize the thing, the personal branding for lawyers, because I feel a lot of them hide behind who they work for, and that becomes, and then of course when you go for an interview, you sort of you want to piggyback off your previous firm's reputation rather than who you are and what you stand for. So I think LinkedIn is still very underutilized amongst legal professionals, and I think it should be. And so, Claire, do you? I want to ask you the famous question now that they ask in most podcasts is what advice what do you know now that you would tell your younger self?
Um, uh, I think that for me, it would be don't let death define you.
Uh-huh.
Um, Something that hit me hard in my life.
Yeah.
Um, Having lost two brothers very unexpectedly, very tragically, very young. Um, and also lost my mum about, well, nearly 4 years ago,
Mm.
4 years on the 13th of June. And she was my daily strength and inspiration.
Mm.
So that was that was hard, losing her, and knowing that I had to keep going without her helping me to keep me going where she had only
Yeah.
come. So going back to when my eldest brother died, when I was studying law, I I wish that somebody would have told me. The message would have been to me, to my younger self, don't let death
Mm.
define you.
Mm.
Because if somebody had said that to me, because I had a lot of amazing friends around me at the time, and my husband actually, as
Yeah.
well, my husband, um, and I would have stayed on and I would have been a lawyer.
Yeah.
But having said that, um, when my second brother died, when I realised that I would not let death define me,
Mm.
I found that strength. And
Yeah.
it wasn't as if my life was so awful after
Mm.
losing my eldest brother. So many wonderful things happened in that period of time, but unfortunately, the sad things in life tend to overshadow the good things at times.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so it was, yeah, I suppose in a way, when my younger brother died, Andrew died, who I
Mm.
was really close to. And I realised that I only had one shot at life. And I very much took hold of that.
Yeah.
Um, I suppose my life really started moving.
Mm.
Yeah, don't let death, or if, don't let death define you, don't let major, so if you have some major traumatic incident happens in your life, no matter what it is,
Mm-hmm.
um, don't let it define you.
Yeah. I mean, I've received similar advice because I've been through stuff, and the thing is, we tend to label ourselves according to what's happened to us, which is kind of weird
Mm,
because what happens to us is on the outside, right? So
yeah.
I've also had similar advice, like you are not what happened to you. It's just you're just dealing with the consequences of it, basically.
Mm,
And I think the important thing in your case is that it could have come sooner, but it came when you figured that out when you did, which unfortunately took a second death, which
mm,
ought not to have happened, I guess. But you at some point something kicked in, something clicked, and you're like, no, this is sad, but you know, I have to give life my best because life can get cut short.
mm,
So I guess as long as we make that pivot from death and realize we're still in the land of the living, so I need to do what I need to do, live out my purpose, whatever my potential, and just be like and just to close off on this, like my goal in life is to die empty. So the graveyard must be a very poor my grave site must be a very poor place.
mm.
I must not die with any potential, which is why I do what I do. And I've got so many fingers stuck. I think I've got 12 fingers stuck in in all these pies because I want to do everything that it's in my power to do
Yeah,
for as long as I can.
yeah,
And then when I'm gone, it's like she did what she did, right? So I don't
yeah,
ever want to die with something that I could have done. And if God forbid it happens at a young age, then at least I started something. But the point is that you don't let your circumstances define you. You
mm,
just learn to deal with the consequences. And of course, out of Look, out of pain came this story.
Yeah.
Without that, we might not have Kennedy Woods now,
Yeah.
right?
Exactly.
So there's always, this year for me has been about looking at silver linings. So as much as something's terribly suck,
Mm.
um, but without thinking, being overly positive, I can nowadays see the silver lining in otherwise negative or tragic things. So
Mm.
I'm grateful that you had the journey, and now we have this fantastic social media marketing agency that does all kinds of um, magic and
Mm.
sprinkles fairy dust over um, people's businesses and makes it thrive. So just tell us where we can find you, all of your socials and your handles and all of that.
And you will just find me on LinkedIn. On I don't. Instagram. I've got accounts on Instagram and Facebook and Twitter /X, but I don't post very. I don't post on there for business. They're very
Okay.
much personal accounts on Instagram, and
Uh-huh.
Facebook. Um, so I'm just on LinkedIn, Claire Woods. That's my name.
Mm.
Um,
And
Also, the company name is Kennedy Woods, not the architects, by the way. If you find the architects, you're in the wrong place. Um, but yeah, Kennedy Woods Marketing, and hopefully you'll find me on
and
there.
the website.
The website is kennedywoods.net.
Okay. So everyone, I if you want to find out more about Claire and of course build your brand and maybe chat about one or two legal things.
Yeah.
Claire's always active on LinkedIn. She's very responsive in DMs. So please do feel free to reach out to her and, of course, to take advantage of what she does best, which is helping businesses, all kinds, not just legal businesses, to get their sort of maximize their digital footprint and, of course, let that generate income and, you know, build your brand and build a brand awareness. So thank you so much, Claire. It was a lovely conversation.
Thank
And
you.
I appreciate your insights and, of course, for being open about your journey. And I hope it's helped someone out there today. And if you want Claire back, you want to talk about more, in-depth stuff or how you make the pivot maybe from law to social media marketing, if that's a legitimate next step for you, then of course I'll be happy to have her back. So thank you, Claire.
You're very welcome. Thank you very much.
Yeah, and this episode will be available, um, I think, in 2 weeks' time. So please watch out for it on Spotify, and I will also upload it to my fledgling YouTube channel, and it will be there for your listening pleasure. So thank you everyone for listening, and I hope you've enjoyed the episode and that you will come back to it over and over.